When we're working with lists, we sometimes need large data sets. For example, if I want to test a method that I've written to compute the average of a set of grades, I want to test it on a large set of data, more than 10 or 20 elements. Trying to assign those elements manually will be really hard. So what we want to do is create a random number generator, or code that randomly generates numbers, and then assign those numbers to our list so that we can test the methods that we write. So in this lesson, I'm going to show you how to generate random numbers and use them in your code. So first thing I want to do is create a method that will allow us to view a large data set. So we're going to call this method display, and it's going to have one parameter, a list. And so what we're going to do is we're going to write a for loop that says for I equals 0, let's space it out better there, I less than list.count plus plus I, if I mod 25 equals 0, console write line. And what I'm doing here is I'm saying if the value of I modulus 25 is equal to 0, in other words, if the value of I will evenly divide by 25, then we want to put a new line, because that would be like the 25th item, the 50th item, the 75th item, the 100th item. Else, console write list sub I plus a blank space. So this way I'll get a display of items 25 per row. That's what I'm shooting for. So that's our display method, and that really has nothing to do with random number generation, but we need that to display the numbers that we're going to generate. Now let's talk about random number generation. C# has a class just for random number generation. It's called the random class. So if we want to create a random number generator, we create an object of the random class. We're going to call ours rand, and we simply call the constructor with no arguments, the default constructor, to create the random number generator. That's easy enough. Now let's create a list. We'll call it numbers. Now we're ready to use the random number generator to populate this list with a set of numbers. So we're going to say for int I equals 0, I less than 100. We could have started at 1 and gone to 100, but this is fine. Plus plus I, numbers.add, now here's where the random number generator comes in, rand.next. The next method will return a random number in the range that I provide, from 1 to 100, but for the upper bound, I have to go one beyond that. So if I wanted to generate random numbers from 1 to 99, I would have put 1, 100. But to generate random numbers in the range of 1 to 100, I have to write 1, 101. As long as I do that, then I will get a random number in the range of 1 to 100. So rand.next returns an integer in the range specified by the arguments. Once I've done that, then all I have to do is display the list to see if my numbers are generally random. And the reason I created this special display method was so that I could see the list in some sort of order to kind of get a good idea of how random the numbers really are. So let's run this, and then we'll talk a little bit more about random number generation. All right, so there's our set of random numbers. Let's run it again. And we get a different set. One of the things you may or may not know about random number generators is that if you don't properly seed, S-E-E-D, the random number generator, you can conceivably regenerate the same pattern of numbers over and over again, because random number generation is really only pseudo random number generation. It's not absolutely random. Seeding the random number generator is too technical to really talk about in this lesson, but just know that by seeding the random number generator with an appropriate value, you will not run the risk of generating the same pattern of numbers over and over again. We don't have to worry about seeding our random number generator because the default constructor, which we called up here, automatically seeds the random number generator using a system time value. Every time we create the rand object, it seeds the random generator with the current time, which will be different than the last time we created a random number object. So we're always guaranteed of getting a new seed every time we call this line of code. So let's run it again. Notice the first number, 14, the last number, 2. Let's run it one more time. This time 78 and 38. So you'll see we're getting a different series of numbers. I'm not looking exhaustively at every single value, but I feel very confident that I am getting a different set of random numbers every time I run the program. So for all practical purposes, this is all you need to know about random number generation to use it in your programs. You call the random class and create a random number object called the default constructor. Then when you want to generate a random number, if it's an integer, call next with a range. If you don't want a range, then leave both arguments blank and you'll just get a random number. But I generally like to generate my random numbers within a range. If I'm looking at test scores, then what I might do is I might say, well, for the most part, no one's going to score below 50 and no one's going to score greater than 100. So I'm going to set my range there. And then my numbers all fall within that range. If I'm not worried about it and I just want numbers from 1 to 100, then I set it back to 1. If I don't want random numbers that are integers, I can type next double and get doubles in that value. There it is right there. I left off a parenthesis. Let's add that parenthesis back in. Now let's run it. Oh, that isn't going to work because I've set my list up as an integer. Let's change it to double. Display is working with integer. We'll change it to double. It's no big deal. Okay, keep getting an error on next double, so let's just look and see what the problem is. Again, well, if looking at IntelliSense, it says that next double returns a random number between 0 and 1. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to write next double times 100. And that really messes up our display. But it did work. But let's take it back to where we were before. Turn everything back to int. Test it one more time. So that's how we generate random numbers. And we're going to use this ability to generate random numbers in the next lesson, where we talk about how to search through a list for a particular element.